Hey, it's Tuxedo Mark. It's 7:49 p.m. on Thursday, September 30th, 2021. And this is my review of the Prisoner episode, Many Happy Returns. Um, okay, so in this episode, okay, let me bring up my spreadsheet. It is actually a 13th episode that was produced. So very late in the series run. But it was originally scheduled to air as episode 7, and that is what it actually aired as. The various ranges that I have seen for it range from episode 2 to episode 13. I can't imagine this being episode 2. Uh, but yeah. So I've seen it listed at number 2, 6, 7, 9, 10, and 13. It looks like 9 is about the most common, and 7 is the second most common. A lot of people seem to say 9. Anyway. Okay. So in my order, it comes out at number 9, yeah. All right, so in this episode, number 6 wakes up one morning. And he goes to a bathroom, turns on the shower head, turns on the water in the sink, and no water is flowing. So he finds that kind of odd. His lights don't work. The door doesn't automatically open. Yeah, the village has like automatic doors for the houses. He walks outside and he finds the village completely abandoned. It's like there's no one there. And this scene is actually effectively creepy, especially since there's no music. So you just hear like the howling of the wind and some occasional birds. But he's walking all around trying to find someone. The store's locked. I believe it was the store that he tried. And he goes to number 2's house eventually because that's his last resort. He has to pry his way into number 2's room because the doors won't slide open. Number 2's chair is empty. So what does he do? He decides, well, this place is abandoned, but he found a taxi with a key still in it. He explores the island. Well, we don't know if it's an island, but he explores the land. He comes across a mountain range that apparently he can't escape by land. So he decides to build a raft, and I guess he breaks into a store or something. He gets supplies, food and other stuff for his journey, and a camera. And he takes pictures of various buildings around the village, including number 2's building, just as proof of where he's been, which is a smart thing to do. He also takes a copy of the Tally Ho, the village newspaper. He mostly uses it to write down his log, like his daily log on the back of it, so he can keep track of how many days that he's been at sea and various other information, stuff like that. He makes a crude compass also, I guess from various electronics that he got at the store. And then he sets off on his raft. and he's taking notes and all of that stuff. Oh, by the way, I should mention during the little introduction thingy for this episode, we hear the voice of number two, but we don't actually see the actor. So that was kind of odd. I noticed that omission. Anyway, then eventually one night while he's at sea, these two guys on a boat like come over to his raft and steal his stuff, and they throw him overboard. But then he manages to swim and get into the boat, unknown to them. He starts a fire by putting like cooking oil on a pan and a bunch of rags. He starts the fire. He puts out the fire, but the smoke is still filling up the place. The two guys take notice, and number six fights them off, but he eventually has to jump off the boat when he's near land. There's like a lighthouse flashing. He comes ashore somewhere, and he's walking all around. He's like, "Where is this? Where is this?" He finds like a group of gypsies, and he can't communicate with them, but they give him a drink of water. He asks for directions to a road. The lady points him to a road. He sees like some kind of traffic stop. Like traffic's been halted. He's wondering. He's so paranoid, obviously, understandably. He's wondering if they're looking for him. By the way, I should mention, up until we hear a bit of the sailors' dialogue, which I don't know which language that they're speaking, but up until that point, many minutes into the episode, no one has said anything up till that point. And even after the boat thing, the first English that we hear in the episode is when number six asks one of the gypsies, "What is this place?" or something like that, or "Where is this?" So yeah, that was neat. I took note of that. The episode was still compelling, which just goes to show you that you don't need dialogue necessarily. If the story's interesting, it'll keep your attention even without dialogue. Anyway, he gets into a truck. He gets out of the truck when he hears a police siren. But then he finds himself in London. Well, that was really convenient. Really lucky of him, huh? But anyway, that's probably where he was trying to make his way to anyway. But anyway, he's walking along. He has no money or anything on him. Otherwise, he probably should have stopped for food. But he stops at his apartment, his old apartment. Well, first he walks past it to avoid anyone looking at it. Then he comes back and he knocks on the door and he asks the maid, who owns the place? And she's like, "Excuse me?" The new owner is not home, and he asks if he can wait for her, but she closes the door. Now, a short while later, the owner drives up anyway in his old car, the one that we see him driving around in the opening theme song. He questions her about the car, doesn't introduce himself at all. He questions her about the car. He's like, "I built this with my own hands." And she's like, "Well, good. You're the person that I want to talk to because I've been having problems with it." Yeah, I always found that car kind of odd. It's so small. It's almost like cartoonishly small, but apparently he built it like it's homemade or something. She invites him in. He mentions it's his old house. He has to look around. He asks for the deed and all this other stuff. She gives it to him. She didn't deal with the same company that he had dealt with to get the house. But I don't know. He feels like he has something to prove. He's talking about how there are differences from when he lived there. She's like, I had things changed. I also noticed there's a shot where a door opens on its own. So that got me thinking, because this series, you got to question everything. You can't take anything for granted in this series, I've noticed. So I started thinking, is he still in the village? Somehow. Who knows how? Obviously, outside, it's London. I mean, when he supposedly got back in the Chimes of Big Ben, the only thing that we ever saw was the inside of the place where he worked at. And then it turns out that he was in the village the whole time. Now, I should have mentioned in the Chimes of Big Ben, I forgot to mention it, but we saw scenes of him and Nadia being taken from one place to another by ship and probably by plane and all this other stuff. So was the footage lying to us in that episode? Because they didn't go anywhere, they were still in the village the whole time? Or were they actually taken somewhere and then just brought back to the village? I don't know. But anyway, so I started thinking, okay, doors opening on, so that's a thing that we see in the village. Is he still in the village? Even though it seems really improbable. Is it is he being fed something into his mind, like with that machine back in A, B, and C? And the village somehow overlooked the electrical opening door thing. Which, how could they overlook something like that? But I kept thinking about all these different theories. But no, he really made it back to London. He goes and he meets with his old superiors. That the new owner of his house, Mrs. Butterworth, lets him have the car, or at least borrow the car or whatever. And he drives to the parking garage that we saw in the opening theme. And he walks into the office. I guess it's that same guy that was there. He's like called the Colonel or something like that. Which, hang on, wasn't there a Colonel in the Chimes of Big Ben? Also, is that the same guy? Hang on. Let me find his prisoner wiki article. Apparently he only appeared in this episode. But I'm not satisfied. I'm going to look up the Chimes of Big Ben. Okay. No, there's a general in that episode, but there's a Colonel J also. A Colonel J. Who, completely different guy. But he only appeared in the Chimes of Big Ben. So apparently, number 6 had worked for 2 different guys known as the Colonel. Okay. So, the man behind the desk in the opening is a completely different guy, played by a different actor. Okay. So there is a so number 6 goes and he meets with the colonel and with a guy named Thorpe, who is also a former colleague. Now I did read in one of these articles somewhere that apparently the guy that plays Thorpe will play a number 2 in a later episode. And that's significant because at one point, Thorpe, when he sees number 6's photographs that he took of the village, he said that he'd like to spend a holiday there or something like that. So does he become the number 2 in that future episode and spend some time at the village? Who knows? It's the same actor. We don't know if it's the same character. But I'm getting ahead, obviously. So, number 6 actually made it out. He escaped. So what happens? Obviously, this is the halfway point of the series. It's episode 9. Well, halfway point. In terms of like viewing order, it's way later in terms of production order. It was number 13 with 4 episodes left, but 4 episodes left according to the production order. So how can there be more of a series if he escaped? Well, he convinces his superiors to try to pinpoint the location of the village, and they question him about how long had he been at sea. 25 days. And it's like, it's March 18th, I believe, when he's at his old house. He asks Mrs. Butterworth for the day. Now, it's Saturday. She says it's Saturday, March 18th, which does correspond to when the day of the week that March 18th fell on in 1967, which is the year that this series started airing. However, back in what was it? The episode where he was they tried to convince him that he was number 12. Geez, what was that episode title? Hang on. Oh, the Schizoid Man. There, the calendar in the village stated it was Wednesday, February 10th, which is not a 1967 date, it's a 1965 date. So that might be an error. Number 6 basically indicates in this episode that he's been away for like a year. But so February to March, I mean, it's been a little more than a month since the Schizoid Man, apparently. But the dates don't match up because February 10th did not fall on a Wednesday in 1967. So unless we're meant to believe that over 2 years have passed, which we can't because number 6 has been gone for only a year, he says, it's possible that that calendar in the village was misleading. Maybe. I mean, we can't trust any information in the village. But anyway, so they do some map work and they try to pinpoint where the village might be. And they basically say like north of Morocco, south of like Portugal, somewhere around there. So this conflicts with the Chimes of Big Ben, where it stated the village was like in Lithuania, about 30 miles from the Polish border. But that information came from Nadia, so she could have been misleading him. But here it seems definite. Now they're going to go and search for the village. Why number 6 wants to do this, I don't know. But he decides they're going to go on flying missions to go and fly out to the village. So he takes off, and his pilot flies him there. And I did read that apparently it wasn't the same actor that originally was scheduled to take off with him. Like it was the actor who played the milkman in the village. So there's the theory that his scheduled pilot was like taken out or whatever, and this other guy took his place to fly number 6 back to the village. Which, yeah, they locate the village, and then the pilot's like, "Be seeing you," and he ejects number 6 from the plane. Number 6 lands with the parachute on the beach. Village is still abandoned. Oh, by the way, before he left the village, he noticed the black cat, which was owned by the number 2 of the of one of the previous episodes. I forget which one. The female number 2 owned that black cat. But anyway, hang on. Oh, it was Dance of the Dead. So this cat reappears. And later on, number 6 sees it sitting on a broken saucer that it apparently broke maybe, and it's just sitting. And when he returns back to the island, it's still sitting there like a month later. Or however long has passed. Number 6 has spent at least a few days in London. And how much time did he spend building a raft? But anyway, so he returns to the village. It's still abandoned. He's walking all around, looking all around. He goes into his old house in the village. He goes into a bathroom, and suddenly the water turns on, and his light turns on. And then he goes and he looks outside, and the village is suddenly very active again with all the taxis running and all the people there. It's literally been like a minute since he walked into the house, and the village went from being completely abandoned to completely active. This is unrealistic, even by village standards. But then again, we had an episode with like a mind projection dream machine type of thing. So anyway, then number 2 comes in. And it's Mrs. Butterworth. Yeah. She's number 2. So the theory is that the number 2 voice that we heard in the introduction for this episode is the number 2 that was in charge, like right before number 6 went to sleep the night before the beginning of the episode. And then this new number 2 took over. So number 6 was tricked into coming back to the village. But he wasn't really tricked into coming back to the village. He wanted to seek out the village as proof. So he was going to land at the village regardless. So what was the plan? They let him escape just hoping that he would be stubborn enough to want to come back? Well, I guess they were right. But yeah, it's like I don't get the ending. I don't get what the whole plan was here. But anyway, were the Colonel and Thorpe in on it or not? Is Thorpe the same guy as the character as the number 2 that we'll see in a later episode? Who knows? Who knows? But yeah, at least it was a very different episode. And it's basically the culmination, like the finale of phase 2 of the series. Basically, Many Happy Returns was the end of phase 1. This is the end of phase 2. And now we've got the final 8 episodes. So basically, I read that this is the last time that number 6 is going to attempt escape until like the series finale, basically. He knows that he's going to be surveilled. Is that a word? Anyway, he knows he's going to be surveilled regardless of if he escapes or not. So he's not going to bother escaping anymore. From what I've read, and yeah, I kind of spoiled myself a tiny bit, is that from now on, he's basically going to work on undermining the village from within. He's just going to, cause trouble. Also, I read that at some point in production, they stopped filming at the resort that they use for the village as like all studio stuff. So if there are any exterior shots of the village, it's basically just stock footage. Yeah. So anyway, not sure what else to say about this episode. It was really interesting. Let me read some of the notes from the Prisoner Wiki. This episode is unusual in that the entire first act, showing number 6 escaping from the village and making his way to London, features no dialogue, save for some German spoken by the gun runners on the boat number 6 finds himself aboard. Okay. Number 6 himself says nothing until over 20 minutes into the episode. Okay. The London scenes in this episode are set on 18 March 1967. Number 6 mentions the next day is his birthday. 19 March 1967 was McGowan's actual 39th birthday. Some of the stock footage used during the aerial search for the village is the same used to depict Shinna Shima in the eponymous Danger Man episode. Okay, Danger Man was Patrick McGowan's previous spy series prior to The Prisoner, which I know it's on Tubi as well. I might watch it. I probably will watch it. I'm not going to review it on here, though. Okay, let's see. Okay, so apparently the guy voiced number 2 during the introduction in this episode is he also voices number 2. He's a generic male number 2, and he does the voice in some other episodes as well. This was presumably to keep Ms. Butterworth's actual identity a surprise for the viewer. The sequence features an additional shot of Rover on the beach where number 2 would have been shown to maintain their anonymity. Okay. All right. Other than Ms. Butterworth, it is left ambiguous as to who else may else who else may also be on the deception in on the deception? I mean, when number 7. Or maybe I don't know if the pilot that took over was the milk delivery person from the village, or it just says he's a milk float driver. So maybe someone that was seen earlier in the episode. Uh the colonel says your stubborn fellow number 6 is also left ambiguous whether he is genuinely joking or he is actually subtly hinting that he is also in on the deception. So yeah, now they're talking about the theory that a later episode, which actually was the previous episode in, or a previous episode in production. Hang on, let me just be absolutely certain. Okay, yeah. The previous episode in production, but a later episode, according to fan preferred viewing order, has the same actor that plays Thorpe in this episode as number 2. So there's the theory that Thorpe becomes number 2 after the events of this episode. But usually, apparently, the series just regularly reused actors because they were known to be reliable. It's not known whether original pilot was in on the switch or if he was incapacitated by a milk float driver. And also, they reused actors to save time, apparently. Now, it's interesting that number 6 does give a name to Mrs. Butterworth when she asks for it. He says his name is Peter Smith, but he ponders over it before telling her. So it's most likely an alias that he thought up on the spot. Yeah, that's the impression that I got from watching the episode, because he did seem to be like Peter Smith. Okay, wait, hang on. Now there's. All right, so when number 6 initially barges into the place where he works, into that where he used to work, into that office, the guy behind the desk is the same guy from the introduction, but he's only in that scene. The actor's name is George Markstein, and he's actually also the script editor for this episode. So yeah. Oh, he was the script editor on the first 13 episodes, which include this episode, the final one to be filmed out of the 13 that he worked on. Okay. All right. So I guess that about does it for this episode. It, if he had just stayed in London, his problems would be over, presumably, unless they try to kidnap him and take him back to the village. But anyway, one thing that I forgot to mention about A, B, and C, so I'm going to backtrack a bit. I was going to mention it, and then I forgot. It's that stupid dream projector thing. It doesn't show stuff from his perspective. Sometimes he's the one on screen. That makes no sense. Right? Especially when they're viewing the footage of him from the opening theme where he's resigning. And then when later on in the episode, when he has to turn D to face the camera so the people watching his stream on the projector can see who it is. Shouldn't his eyes be the camera? Right. Anyway. So now on to the next phase of the series. Okay. That's it. It's 8:26 p.m. and thanks for watching.